Boxing with Dakota and the big dog. I'm the big dog, and that's Dakota. And today we're talking about an outcome I didn't see happening and probably a fight that people have very strong opinions about. So let's get into Fabio Wardley versus Joseph Parker. Full transparency, I did not get the pay-per-view, so I just watched what DAZN put on their YouTube channel to form my opinion. I think that's important to say, but in the current economy and the way boxing is right now, there's going to be moments where people like myself, we're going to go off of highlight videos because that's the access we're getting at this point. So, Dakota, I'm not sure how much you saw the fight or what you saw, but let's start with the outcome, and then eventually I think we'll get into the stoppage.
Yeah, bro. I mean, neither of us called this one, right? I mean, Parker on a beautiful string of wins, pretty much the consensus #2 guy in the division at the moment. And Wardley has been, while he's been an incredible power puncher, it's tough when a guy's on multiple occasions either getting hurt or coming from behind to score knockouts to know at what point are you unable to get yourself out of that well, and it seemed like in terms of levels that Parker was a pretty massive step up for Wardley, and that everything was basically in Parker's favor in terms of experience and skills, and as it turned out, size as well. But Wardley, this fight, I was getting reminders of the first Luis Ortiz versus Deontay Wilder fight, that I was very confident that Ortiz was going to win, and large sections of that fight pretty much confirmed what I thought was going to happen. And then he just laid him out. And that was similar to what happened in this one. I think the difference in this one was Wardley offensively presents more than Wilder. And I think that Parker in the second round, it felt like he hurt Wardley a little bit, and he opened up a little too much, a little too quickly. And it completely changed the dynamic of the fight because he got hurt at the end of the second. He kind of took control back and won some of those middle rounds. But it was, from that part of the second round on, it was a dangerous fight, right? It wasn't as much allowed to be a tactical fight, which always gave Wardley a chance. And he was tremendous, man. I mean, he was able to at least tread water with Parker from 3 to 9, where Parker was winning most of the rounds. But just an incredible performance. And I draw the Wilder comparison, not that they fight similarly, but in that he's got lights out power for 12 rounds, and not everybody has that, and that makes him very dangerous, on top of being I think maybe more of an athletic specimen than we've been giving him credit.
So I have my own comparison. I'll get into it, but should I start with the comparison or should I work backwards? Because it's up to you're like, I don't care.
Work backwards. Do you, bro.
So what I'm thinking with Wardley is, I think most people are going to compare him to Deontay Wilder because it's like power is clearly what brings them both to the dance. What's interesting about Fabio Wardley is, I'm a big list guy. I like thinking about where people fit all time. I kind of like thinking about skill sets and stuff. He's one of the most explosive heavyweights for someone that came into boxing late. But I think just in general, he's one of the most explosive heavyweights we've seen.
Another Wilder comparison, by the way, right? That they were
another
both
Wilder,
late
but it's
rumors.
Like his explosive fluidity is really unique because he's able to kind of sequence punches, be explosive, and hit extremely hard, that you don't typically see someone who comes late to a sport have that confidence. To me, now here's the comparison. He's like Tommy Morrison if Morrison had a gas tank. A lot of what he does is what I loved watching Tommy Morrison do, but Tommy only had 4 rounds in him. He's doing a lot of the things that if people thought Tommy could get to that next level, this is what Tommy would do. And I think he has two big traits we underestimated. He hits extremely hard to the point where fights just change because of how hard he hits. And
which I think we knew, right? But I think, but continue. I think there's more you're going to say.
So the hitting hard allows him to fight at a pace that makes traditional boxers have to engage or be present more than they want to be. You don't really get rounds off with him. You can lose a round, but you're expending energy. It's
They
like,
walking that tightrope.
yeah, it's like if you're trying to run a 7-minute mile, you don't really get to take your foot off the gas. But if you run a 10-minute mile, you can, you can feel okay. You can be on the phone. But if you're running a 7-minute mile, all of a sudden, huffing and puffing for most people. And I think that it's a combination of his power doesn't fade. He's very explosive, and he knows how to keep a pace on people to the point where like they don't get to rest. He just keeps that pace going and going and going.
And it's really no thing for him to come second in a round as long as he gets a couple big shots in, that adds up down the line.
What I think he also has this mindset of he normally guys like this, when they hit a level, they get discouraged. They're like, why am I not landing the shot? What's really incredible about Fabio Wardley, and I underestimated, was he's not deterred. And we saw it against Justice Hooney, but I felt like Hooney had a ceiling. So I didn't really think that fight fully showed me what I was waiting for. With this fight, it was a mind melter because he hurts him in the second, and you start to think Parker's doing his thing, but his confidence never wavered. Like, it felt like for Wardley late to boxing, there's a belief that, hey, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to land a shot. And I think that that's what kind of makes him scary, is he doesn't panic. He doesn't rush. He doesn't doubt that it's coming. He has a lot of belief in his butt whooping abilities.
Yeah, and not only does he have the power, like you said, he clearly believes in it. And I think from the flip side for Parker, it's like I feel bad for him because he's earned his opportunity at Usyk and wanted to stay busy and didn't want to take an unchallenging fight and took a very risky fight and lost that fight. But it's part of what we love about him too, that he wants to and has consistently fought the best possible opposition he can get. And I hope it's not the end of the line for him, because I think he still has a lot to offer. But it's a tremendous win for Wardley, and in the keep what you kill thinking, I mean, he should get the Usyk fight.
And he now is a guy. Now let's talk about our guy, Will. He said, hey, guys, it was a great fight. Career best performance from Wardley. Shame that it's a bit overshadowed by the stoppage controversy. Dakota, what were your thoughts on the stoppage? I feel like I have a different opinion maybe than most on this. What's your thought?
I think sometimes there's a difference between a stoppage I disagree with and when I think it was a bad stoppage. This was the stoppage that I disagreed with, but I have a hard time calling it a bad stoppage. I personally would have liked to have seen a verbal warning or something to give Parker that one more chance, but I really have a hard time calling that a bad stoppage.
So to me, it was this one's on Parker. Tim Bradley was in the same spot against Ruslan Provodnikov, and my guy Boxrec Ray on Twitter brought this up. Take a knee. Take a knee at this point. You're close to the end of the round. Take the knee, buy the time. This was right in that danger zone where Parker was just barely throwing back. Yes, things might not be landing, but the optics were you were just covering up and taking punches, trying to
and somewhat landing.
And somewhat landing, and you had been hurt. And I feel like this was Parker needed to do more at this moment in the fight, to be perfectly honest. I feel like this was a moment where I don't think he could hold Wardley, because I think Wardley's too strong, too physical. To me, it was really strange that he did not take a knee. And maybe it's pride or the warrior spirit, but it feels like if he took the knee, he had a real chance to win this fight in the 12th. And by just sitting on the ropes, he was giving the ref the judgment of what do I perceive, rather than he was having the outcome. I don't think it's a bad stoppage, because if you look at it, it's a big man putting this guy on the ropes, landing a lot of punches.
He snapped his head a couple times too. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, Parker was slipping and sliding and not taking any punishment. He was taking some heavy shots, and that eye was starting to look pretty gnarly. I'd be surprised if he didn't have, a broken orbital bone or something in his eye socket.
I didn't see it as an injustice. I saw a lot of people on the internet being like, this is a bad stoppage, or the controversy, like Will brings up.
Like I said, bro, I don't agree with the stoppage 100%, but I can't call it a bad stoppage. I can't.
Yeah, it just felt like it was a tactical error, is the way I would say it. And it was a stoppage that I feel like happened a shot or two early, maybe. But the way the fight was going towards that round, it was going to a bad place for Parker.
And this would be my argument for it too. Like you said, Lukey, it was on Parker. He needed to show something, and I don't know that he could have in that moment. So maybe that is, that's why you stop it, right?
I also think that it's heavyweight boxing and things get scary very quickly. So it's like Parker was very damaged and he's leaning his weight on the ropes and he's not reacting the way we traditionally see him. That's why I just keep going back to there's scenarios in fights that you have to practice. And I think that it's hard to look at Andy Lee or Parker, who've had all this success lately, and then they lose one fight and you go, yeah, they didn't train for this. No, they're upper echelon. It shows you how difficult boxing is, right? When the best coaches, the best fighters never expect to be hurt in a fight and never expect to have to, maybe I need to take a knee or maybe I need to work on when I'm hurt, because the mindset is always we're going to do what we do. But this just felt like a tactical error to me. It's like what Box Rick Gray said on Twitter. I wish they would have taken the knee, because if he took a knee in this round, he gave him, that's the only thing I can see to defend the stoppage is why not take the knee? Why not give yourself a chance? Because if that fight didn't get stopped then, it was going to get stopped before the round ended, because Wardley was not going to stop punching and Parker was not doing enough. I think for most referees just to let him. And I also think, this is me, when a referee starts getting close to a fighter, I feel like that's kind of the verbal warning. When you see a referee getting close, that's when they're about to step in.
Right. If I have any issue with it, it's sometimes because you're not, it's the heat of the fight and you're buzzed. You got to maybe hit him with a show me something. That's all I would have liked.
To me, this is a learning moment of, and also it speaks to why Tim Bradley's a Hall of Famer. Tim Bradley was in the same type of fight with Provodnikov, and what he did was take a knee, and he ended up getting the decision, and it's like things like that, and it's like people never talk about things like, okay, when you're getting your butt whooped, maybe taking a knee is the strategy to use at this point.
Yeah, put a pause on the momentum. But I feel like really the first real tactical error was opening it up as much as he did in that second round, which led to him getting really buzzed, which immediately changed the dynamic of the fight. And he did hurt Wardley, but he didn't hurt him like that. He hurt him like, I got you on the ropes and I'm going to pump my jab and I'm going to touch the body and I'm going to feel out kind of where you're at. And he went balls to the wall. And on one hand, I get it when you got a puncher like Wardley, you don't want to play with your food. He's, maybe there's a thinking about Fury versus Wilder too. I'm going to bully him and push him around and be more physical. But I think he got too hot too quick and he left himself open. And the fight was never the same. The kind of fight he was going to fight like he did against Wilder and against Zhang, that was never going to happen after the second round.
Title of the show, Fabio Wardley is an elite heavyweight. I think that's now a true statement. Another thing, no brainer, right? I also think he's and what do I know? I keep betting against him, or hypothetically betting against him. I keep predicting against him. He is all tailor-made for Oleksandr Usyk. Like, this is the guy.
But he's got me going, you'd think he's tailor-made for Usyk. I thought he was tailor-made for Parker.
There is something that, like, from a pure fight fan standpoint about Wardley that's pretty fun. Everything he does should have a limit, but there's something kind of magical about his willpower and self-belief that, like, he makes you wonder. And that's kind of the beauty of great sports moments, is when people make you wonder just how good someone is. And Wardley kind of does have that, but I have trouble seeing, like, Usyk, I think first and foremost is the type of guy who could slow a fight down. And I still think if Wardley's in a fight where someone's able to slow the tempo and make it a you go, I go fight and make him have to make decisions, that's not going to be the fight. And I think you kind of hit it on the head is when Parker kind of opened up in the second round, that really made it Wardley's fight because he thrives in chaos. He thrives in exchanges.
Right. It just gave him that chance immediately.
And to me, it's like the way that you want to fight him is you want to slow, and maybe you can't. Maybe that's his greatness is you can't do it. But to me, it's like you want to slow the fight down. You want to make this. It's like the San Antonio Spurs basketball. Remember, they'd get the ball, dribble a little, slow, pitch into the paint, pitch it out. Just make every single exchange mean something.
Set 7 picks before you do one pass. But I think that's what it is. Like and Usyk definitely has the skill set to do that, but you can't get greedy with Wardley, man. You gotta take little bites because if you step into that zone where he feels comfortable opening up, he's a problem.
I think the other thing too is he's so hittable at times. Parker got lured into the fight because I think
and not for nothing, Lukey. I think like Joe Joyce, there will come a time where Wardley hits that wall because he's consistently taking so much punishment. At some point, it's going to be the kid leans on the wall after you've been banging the wall with the hammer, and it's going to fall apart. I think.
Let me ask you this: because Terrence Crawford's more than likely the boxer of 2025, right? Because he beats Canelo, more than likely, right? For us, we probably agree because that's phenomenal. If he didn't win that, Fabio Wardley's probably the boxer of the year, right?
Yeah, you got it. He's in the conversation.
And he just beat 2 elite heavyweights in different stages. He beat an elite up-and-comer, and he beat a tried-and-true veteran. I mean, if Crawford didn't have that magical moment, we're looking at Fabio Wardley as the man in 2025, which is kind of – there's something real rocky about him. Like he's like this, like he shouldn't be here. I always doubt him, and he just kind of is outlasting all of his peers.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Anything on the undercard you cared about?
Nothing on the undercard I saw, unfortunately, brother.
Okay, let's go over to the Dimitri Salita card. Let's go to Joshua Pagan versus Maliek Montgomery.
Boy, you want to talk about like a bad stoppage. I felt like that stoppage was not my favorite in the moment that they stopped it, but also I felt like they could have stopped it because of the blood so much earlier. Like I felt like the moment the referee stopped the fight was sort of arbitrary when they had long overstayed their welcome on that cut, it felt like, and it didn't feel like the corner was dealing with the cut very well. But aside from that, I thought Pagan stayed composed. I liked what I saw. His inside fighting ability is really good. He's slippery. There's a lot to build on, and he fought through, not that he was the one cut, but he fought through a very physical fight, stayed composed, and got the job done.
I mean, I think that like the fight changed with the cut. Pagan really impressed me. He's a top prospect to win a fight like this. The Montgomery did a lot of political bartering to stay in this fight. He talked himself into the fight, I felt, because the fight should have been stopped. That blood was flowing into his eye, just a bloody fight. I felt as though I didn't love the stoppage, but I felt like, as you said, it was an accumulation stoppage, and it felt as though the referee was starting to get uncomfortable with.
But it couldn't have been a punishment stoppage, right? Because it was a competitive fight. So you're saying it was basically like, oh, we're done with this. Too much blood. But there's
I think that's what. Blood. But to me, what I would have liked to have seen is in the corner, the doctor stops the fight. It was just a very unsatisfying.
Yeah.
It felt as though Pagan was clearly winning the fight in my mind. It didn't feel like it changed the outcome. It felt like the cut needed to make the fight stop because the cut was just the story of the fight. That said, it was weird because it was just an uppercut, 10 seconds left in the round. The ref waves it off. I don't know. It to me, it's not the story of the fight because Pagan clearly was winning I don't know how you had it, but I felt Pagan was pretty clearly winning the fight.
For sure.
But to me, the story was the bloody and brutal nature of it. And I feel like, sadly, that cut is probably going to be a storyline for Montgomery's career going forward. Because, like, a cut like that, I feel like is going to open in
Bro,
future
and not for
fights.
nothing, like, well, I'm watching him in the corner. We talk about this all the time, right? I'm watching him in the corner. He doesn't have the adrenaline cream. He doesn't. They're literally just pressing it down with a towel and wiping it. And when you got a cut like that, bro, you got to be a little more ready. Am I wrong?
Well, no, but this is why our show is different at times. We offer different analysis. And one of the things we offer is look at the corners. And we're not saying that it's a bad team or bad people, but when things go wrong, it's not about if you're good or bad. It's about experience in those moments, right? Because sometimes people might say aren't talented have enough experience where that experience would trump a very talented person because they just know what to do in those moments. Sometimes experience is better than talent. And what it felt like is that that team had never had that adversity. And there was a lot of learning on the fly. It was Maliek learning on the fly about the cut. It was the corner learning on the fly. I felt as though
They were
you know,
unprepared, Luke. They were unprepared because part of how a cut gets that bad is you're not getting the blood to stop in between rounds. So then the vision is worse. He's getting hit more. There's no time for it to kind of congeal. They've taken a blood-soaked towel and pressing in on his eye, bro. And it's just that's not how you deal with a cut like that.
yeah, it was a tough one because I like seeing Mike Rodriguez, Basil, Stitch. When you don't see those guys, not to say that you always need a famous guy, Aaron Navarro, but when you don't see those famous faces, there's only so many people. Russ Abner, you want someone that has a little experience. And it's like, to me, it felt as though when the cut happened, it went from bad to worse to even worse.
Yeah, and he got blessed by, multiple times going to see those doctors and they let him keep going. I don't know why or how, but they did.
And I think the other thing too is Malik's style is a physical style. So when you're dealing with a brutal cut and your style is physicality, it's just, it's hard to, even if he had a Basil or a Stitch, cut's probably going to reopen because your style is going to be going forward. So on top of like the cut not being stopped, it's also hard to have a pressure fighter who has a facial wound. Like,
Right,
because
right. The cut's a problem no matter what.
the fighter has to give the cut man they have to buy them some time to work and fix the wound. I think a great example of that is when Chris Algieri had his eye injury against Ruslan Provodnikov, his style allowed people to work on the cut or work on the face because he's able to buy time. He's able to give them. So I think that no matter what, it would have been tough for Maliek because his style has come forward. He's not a guy that's like, he can box a bit, but his preference is to outwork you and push a pace.
Yeah.
Potential for Pagan. What do you think?
I really liked what I saw. I like the variety. For me, sometimes I think he's in the pocket too long, kind of for no reason. It feels like I'm not saying he's he has no movement ability. You see he can box and move as well, but sometimes I feel like he's stationary without setting something up. And I think that was part of, Montgomery was successful in making the fight physical, but I think there were moments where I was like, I think Pagan he could make this a little easier for himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that interests me is how young he is in his career. Like, he's very young in his career, relatively speaking, and he's taken on real challenges.
Yeah.
So to me, Pagan, if I were to compare him to someone, Jesse Vargas kind of jumps off the page as someone that early in his career took on these type of challenges. Maybe didn't wow you with the way he was fighting per se, but he was winning the fights pretty handily as a developmental fighter. To me, he kind of reminds me of a Mayweather Promotions version of Jesse Vargas right now.
That's a good comparison. I think there were also times where I felt like he looked a little like Ruben Villa. I thought he like the way he keeps body contact and creates angles and stuff.
Kind of similar fighters,
Yeah.
kind of similar fighters. So I mean, he's looking the part of a world-class fighter. Now, just where does that train end? We don't know just yet. Good performance. Now let's go to this week. Probably the most notable fight is on Thursday. If you didn't catch the press release that went out this week, the fight will be on Top Rank Classics, Roku channel, and all those Tubi. So if you go on the platforms, they call them fast channels. I just learned you can watch Mikaela Mayer versus Mary Spencer, so it'll be accessible and free on these type of things. Big fan of that. Thank you. Mikaela Mayer trying to be a 3-division world champion.
But just real quick, Top Rank Classics is an app itself.
It's a channel on these up and coming like Tubi and Roku TV and
so it's a channel on another app.
And you can watch the fight on that channel.
Wow. Crazy times, Bob.
Okay, so we got through that. Mikaela Mayer trying to be a 3-division world champion. She's fighting Mary Spencer. To me, Mikaela feels like she's a Hall of Famer already. She's had a pretty important career. It's kind of strange because she lost to Alicia Baumgardner, but I feel like she's more impactful for women's boxing than Alicia. And I think in the end, she's going to have the better resume too. It's kind of weird. Like Baumgardner to me is a fringe Hall of Famer. Mikaela's a no-doubter. Once again, moving up in weight, challenging an interesting opponent. What are your thoughts on this matchup and kind of what's going on?
Just to add to what you said about Alicia, it felt like Alicia won that fight and then has been playing keep away a little bit. Whereas Mikaela, I thought she won the fight. A lot of people thought she won the fight.
And for transparency, I did too.
Yeah, and consistently has taken tough, challenging fights. And even after the Jonas fight, which again, I think there was an argument that she won that fight. I
thought she pretty clearly won that fight, to be honest.
Yeah, she's proven to, I'll move up in weight. I'll take these hard fights. And when you win, and you take those risks and you win, it pays off. And I think that she's shown a willingness to take that risk that Alicia just hasn't. And I think not doing a rematch was the first indication of that. In terms of this matchup, I got to be honest, Bub, I don't know enough about Mary Spencer, but at this point in Mikaela's career, I kind of just favor her to win fights. I just think she's going to be more talented for the most part. But at 154 pounds, I'm also, I don't know. I don't know at what point does she start to hit that.
I think the interesting fight part for me is what is her physical limitation? And is she someone that at some point we could see her fight Clarissa Shields? Because as she moves up in weight, would the weights ever work with her and Clarissa? Would the weights ever work with her and Shadeja? Because, I mean, the thing about Mikaela that's interesting is it seems like she goes to wherever the challenges are or the interesting fights to her. And she's so tall that I don't think she's as worried about, like, kind of the fights because she's talented, skilled, and she can make different weights. I think that if she does well here, it's kind of interesting to see what are the fights that could be made in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she's like Amanda Serrano, right? It makes her one of the more dynamic fighters in the sport that you can imagine her in high level fights in like 5 different weight classes.
And she really can just go, who's the best opponent for me? Like, what's the most interesting, most captivating fight? I'll do that one. And I think that's kind of what made Amanda Serrano so fun over the past years, besides that she had brutal knockout power on her come up and such. But it's, I think Mikaela is a really interesting fighter. I think she's gotten better as her career has gone on too. I think that like there's a mid area of her career where she was too willing to exchange with opponents on the inside. Didn't love that. It's really felt like in the Sandy Ryan feud, she really kind of found her own and incorporates her distance and then will fight on the inside when she needs to, but she doesn't, that's not like her go-to. And I don't know. I think she's one of these fighters that's going to be more influential than we realize, because I think there's a lot of young women that are going to get into boxing and Mikaela was their favorite fighter. And she's going to not just be important for this era, but like for eras to go forward, she's going to be someone that was hugely important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And longevity, again, another piece of that. I always have to give props to fighters with longevity. And I also think like it's another piece of evidence that shows you like maybe weight cutting isn't always, presenting the best version of yourself. Maybe when you allow your body to be fresher, the performances match that,
To be a hater on the front line, I think she also benefits from a lack of depth in women's boxing to jump between these divisions, because I think if she was,
Sure.
we don't see Arislandi Lara kind of jumping up and down. Guys have to kind of, I think that.
But we do see Canelo, very talented fighters. Canelo, Crawford just did it too. Canelo, Pacquiao, Floyd, many of the very greatest of our times really didn't do like hard weight cuts. And I think that there's a correlation. Obviously, there's a talent correlation as well. But I think that once you're confident in your talent and you know that you're the best, and you're not saying, okay, every time I get into camp, I got to cut 35 pounds of water off my body just to get my check. My opinion has always been that doesn't maximize the fighter. And in seeing Mikaela, when she moved up in weight, all of a sudden she's like this physical power puncher. I felt like we saw the best of her above 140, as opposed to early in her career when she was, a featherweight and a junior lightweight.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Undercard, we got your boy Wilkens Mathieu will be in there. He's taking on Shakeel Phinn. Finn had that fight with Eric Bazinian that I thought Finn won. I believe it was a draw. Pretty interesting test.
It's a good matchup.
I don't know where I feel about Mathieu. At times he feels robotic and kind of pulls straight back, but a lot of smart people are high on him. And Finn is a really durable, high motor guy who I think could give anyone a tough fight. And then the fight I really want to see is my guy Arthur Biyarslanov taking on Sergey Lipinets. Just a really interesting fringe contender bout. Arthur's trying to get into those rankings, or if he's not already, and I think this is a former champion. And Adam Azim looked really good against him, so I'm curious to see how he looks compared to Adam Azim.
What do you think Lipinets has left?
I don't know, because I was thinking Lipinets was done, right? And then I realized that he fought Robbie Davies not that long ago and gave us a classic. Maybe that was the last great performance. But like, Sergey is one of these guys where he's a true professional. So it's like, I don't think I'd ever count him out. I was pretty shocked that Azim beat him the way he did. I thought that was very impressive for Adam Azim. But then I've always been a little higher than most people on Azim. I've always thought that there was something there. I don't know. I think this is a real fight because Sergey can punch. And I know that he's going to train hard. And I think when you have a puncher who trains hard, it's always a real fight.
Yeah. But it's just, is he still fresh enough to win a fight like this? Whereas, when he beat Figueroa, it was more about like Figueroa is not necessarily as professional as somebody like Lipinets, who's always going to be ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that he's probably not where he was when he beat Kondo and lost to Mikey Garcia. Like, that gear's gone. But I think he's also good enough where his a little diminished prime still could beat some top level fighters, because he's not like the most technically sound, but he's physically tough. He hits hard. He's good at cutting off the ring, and he has some punches he disguises very well. He punches to the body and the head, and he's another pace guy. If you let him fight at his pace, he will break you down.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen this guy Biyarslanov, to be honest.
I like him a lot. He's a eye of the tiger guy.
That guy's pretty good.
Stopped him. Yeah,
That's a good one.
He's a really, really interesting up and comer. And for me, I'm interested to see when you do the eye test, get our glasses on, how does he look compared to Adam Azim?
Yeah.
Because I mean, these are the matchmaking boxing nerd fights. Let's just look. How does he look? Let's just greatly judge. I also think that it's not a true A to B comparison, because I think this Lipinets is going to be better than the one that fought Azim, because I think he's fighting with his career on the line. So I think this is going to be a very dangerous Lipinets, and that's why I'm excited about the fight, is I think Lipinets is going to view this as I don't get many opportunities if I lose this one.
Yeah. Yeah, it is sort of an end of the line, you know. I do think if he were to like do the gatekeeper thing and like have a great performance and lose a split decision, I don't think he loses any ground either.
And that's why I'm saying I think it could be an interesting fight because Lipinets has dynamite. He's beaten incredible guys like Robbie Davies Jr. He's just a guy that doesn't go away. He's first ballot Hall of Very Good. You know, he's one of those guys. On Saturday, we got 2 fights. We got Joshua Buatsi against Zach Parker, and we also got Lenier taking on Jordan Thompson. Which one are you more interested in?
I think I'm more interested in Parker versus Buatsi.
Let's start there.
Mostly because it's like they're both kind of guys when they've stepped up to fight the other top of the UK light heavyweight scene, they've sort of come in second. And I thought that Parker beating Ryder was sort of a no-brainer, and it was a weird ending. I can't remember. He had some sort of injury, and the fight got stopped.
Ryder to me broke him, and I kind of saw that one coming. Was Ryder was an ultimate pace fighter. That's what brought him to the dance. And Parker was untested.
It was an injury, though, right? It wasn't like
an injury, but it felt like Ryder was making Parker feel extremely uncomfortable, and he was injured. But it felt like if there were other guys that weren't named Ryder in there with him, he might have tried to do it. But my guy Ryder in his prime was just a bull. You know, that talk about like the Fabio Wardley pace. He put that on you from round 1 with a high guard. You know, he was just like, let's ride this pace out. So to me, I feel like that was an injury, but there was a mental component to that where Zach Parker was like doing the classic, this isn't fun. Like I'm not having fun in here and my hand hurts or my whatever hurts.
Yeah.
I don't like the way this is going. Let's just, let's do it another day. This isn't fun. We're playing hoops and I'm down 15-0. Can we start over? That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah. Well, I also remember that it was a close fight up to that point, and the stoppage was kind of weird. Anyway, the point being, them stepping up to the other elite light heavyweights or guys of their division. You know, he came in second against Ryder, and then Buatsi just kind of came in second against Smith, and was kind of just the less talented guy. And personally, I think that Parker's probably has more ability than Buatsi overall.
Interesting. I see this completely opposite. I see Buatsi as a guy who...
I also haven't seen Parker since the Ryder fight, by the way.
Yeah, I just see Parker as a guy who's a good power puncher, who has potential, but he really hasn't worked on the nuances of his game. Like, he's a power first guy. And I see Buatsi as someone who was slow tracked, but he was an Olympic pedigree fighter who has some intangibles and he's able to do things. And I think Buatsi's downfall is he's a fighter at heart. One of his favorite fighters is Joe Frazier. And I think sometimes he likes to exchange with people. But to me, I think this is going to be almost like a showcase for Buatsi. I think Buatsi's going to really make Parker look confused in there because I just think there's a level. I think Buatsi has shown he can compete against world level fighters. Parker to me has never even competed against world level fighters. Like, he's not been competitive yet against that level.
Interesting. I think it'll be a good matchup. I just see Parker with the size, with the length, with the footwork. I just think he'll have more tools, but I've never really seen it with Buatsi either.
To me, Buatsi, I see a lot of things. It's just sporadic with him. You know, he doesn't go round after round. He has good rounds, but it's like he puts together kind of incomplete or boring performances. He's never fluidly put a fight together for me. Yeah. Will in the chat says Buatsi should win comfortably. My big impressive win for Buatsi was when he beat Dan Aziz. I thought that was a really solid win, and I don't think Parker has a win like that. And then you look at Parker's fight against Tyrone Zung, I believe it was, not a great performance. You know, the scores don't depict how close the fight was. I also am not completely convinced Parker does that well when guys punch with him. It kind of feels like he's I want my power to make you stop punching. And when guys start punching with him, it's a little bit of that not fun. I will go as far as saying I think Buatsi might stop him.
Wow. I just don't. see that, but maybe I'm missing something.
That's kind of like our fight of the week, I guess. Probably for most people is the Buatsi fight. We'll get into it if guys want, but a lot of regional fights on this card that I'm not familiar
While
with.
you break those down, I'm gonna go sneeze, so I
Okay.
don't do it in the camera.
Yeah, so he's gonna do that. The only fight for me that really stands out that I'd say, hey, if you're a big hardcore fight, there's two fights, right? We got Liam Cameron versus Troy Jones. Liam Cameron, best known for giving Ben Whittaker a hard fight. They rematch. Whittaker beats him, but he kind of had an endearing fight. Troy Jones, for the hardcore enthusiast, you might remember him. He fought Ezra Taylor. Ezra Taylor actually just fought this past weekend on the undercard of Wardley Parker. And he's a solid domestic level fighter. No clue where his career is going. Liam Cameron is a very tough physical fighter. He had basically this past year with Whittaker, where it's like he had that weird fight about, I don't know, October, November last year. Then he returns, stoppage loss to Whittaker. A lot of people didn't love how the stoppage was, whatever. He's taking on Troy Jones. Kind of feels like a 50-50 fight.
See, that was what I just went and did off camera.
So it feels like that fight with Liam Cameron, Troy Jones, 50-50. Maybe I'm missing something, but I probably think maybe Liam Cameron has the physicality and maybe win that and put himself in an interesting fight because of, what have you, but what do I know? And then the fight that I'm kind of sneaky excited about, Bradley Rea has been a guilty pleasure of European boxing for me for some time. He's a light heavyweight who's taken on Lyndon Arthur. Lyndon Arthur has two types of fights. They're incredible or boring. I am hoping this is that incredible because it's like Lyndon Arthur has been about in 2 or 3 fights I've just truly enjoyed. And then he has another style where he gets in with Bivol and he's like, I'm totally not going to get stopped tonight, but I'm not going to engage. I'm going to do the bare minimum. And he's smart enough and talented enough where he knows how to survive. I am really hoping this is the Lyndon Arthur versus Anthony Yard where he pulls off the upset and it's just a great fight. He's had a couple of those where he's emerged. I'm optimistic this is a fight.
I think it could be as well. I mean, I personally think that Lyndon Arthur he's been one of those guys that takes a lot of tough fights, and you don't always win them, but he's got to win over Anthony Yard. You can't entirely count him out, but you can also use him a little bit as a measuring stick.
Oh, great. Did I change my microphone somehow?
You sure did, Bob. Sounds like you're in a tin can.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see.
Listen, guys, we're just a couple guys doing our best,
Now I should be back.
Oh yeah, You're back.
Okay, so a half hour behind the show. Always love Lukey and Dakota take on the fights every week. Thank you, Martin Mulligan from the UK. We love that. And when you get to this point in the show, I hope you enjoy it. We did a lot of British boxing this week. And that's because we have a global program. We go international. We got listeners from the UK and we love talking British fights. We're trying to get more and more knowledgeable, but it's hard, because we don't live and we don't have the access to the knowledge of the fighters, but we try our best. This card, Lenier Perreault versus Jordan, I believe it's Jordan Thompson. Jordan Thompson. I love Lenier Perreault. I think he might be the next era of great heavyweight. That said, I don't like the matchup. It feels like a stay busy. Last time we saw Thompson, he got knocked out by Jay Apataya. I want to say that was probably 2 years ago. Could be 3.
At cruiserweight as well.
It was at cruiserweight. He's coming up to heavyweight. Really didn't do too well with Jay. I don't see how going up to heavyweight's going to help him. That said, Perreault is really interesting. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I've only seen him once. I liked what I saw. It seems like he could take maybe a tougher fight based on what I saw and the talent that I saw, but better to stay busy. But these are the kinds of matchups we're getting right now.
I think the problem with Perot is, right, it's probably hard to find someone that'll say yes if the money's not right. And he's such a risky, like you're dealing with a Cuban fighter who up until his last fight, I believe, let's do research. I believe up until his last fight, he was basically one of the scariest guys. It was, I think that was, where was it? He had one fight where he faced adversity. I think it was his last fight against Dertelius Webster. And that was in April. So up until then, he's just getting like first and second round knockouts and really running through people. He had a hard fight in his last fight. He's southpaw, Cuban, amateur pedigree, just kind of everything people typically don't want to fight, especially early on in their career. Sure. Really talented, hard hitter, good coach with Bob Santos. It's like just a nightmare. So I feel like until he's forced or people are offering a lot of money, it's hard to get him fights, because I just don't think there's a lot of guys saying, you know what I want as my DAZN debut, or what I'd like to return is I'd like to take on this guy who might be a future world champion before people give me the credit of facing him. So, because I mean, I think there's a world where Perot possibly could beat Parker or Wardley right now. That's the level of talent I see him at.
I haven't seen enough to be able to go that far.
Well, that's how I view him, right? So I view him as like at that level. So I think when you have a guy that I see that type of potential, the matchups maybe aren't always going to be exciting. Kind of reminds me of Arislandi Lara in the last decade, where people go, why is he fighting this guy? It's like, there's not a lot of guys that want to fight Lara. It's like, there's only a certain amount of guys. They're the real guys. They're warriors, and I think that's where.
Hey, him and Janibek, I think, is going to be a great fight, man.
I think it's closer to a 50-50 than people think.
I think I'm looking at it as a 50-50.
I think I don't want to show my hand, but I might be picking Lara.
It's kind of hard not to.
So, undercard for this fight card, couple of really good ones. I really like on this card. I will read them to you. Yo Elvis Gomez is taking on Atavius Ingram. It's a step your game up fight. Yo Elvis Gomez obviously took that early career loss. Didn't look great in his last fight, man. He's kind of been ho-hum lately. And Tavius Griffin has been this undercard fighter, fighting mostly at the Carib Royale. And this is a massive step up in competition. He's really never fought someone of this caliber. So who knows? I just remember the Edwin Humane Jr. fight was a majority decision, and it was not, didn't blow our socks off with Gomez. Pat Brown taking on Felix Valera is a really interesting cruiserweight bout for us boxing nerds. Valera is probably a little past his prime, but for someone that I remember seeing him in like 2019 or 2018, he can do some things in the ring, man. And then we got Omari Jones and Nishant Dev, two top junior middleweights featured on the undercard. I'm going to step away for a second, but why don't you talk about some of the fights that interest you?
Love seeing the development of Omari Jones in those first couple of fights of his career. I've said this on the show before too, but when I watched him as an amateur, sometimes when guys are fighting in that amateur style, it's hard to imagine them really sitting down on their shots. Like, what does that look like? And he's come out and he's been like kind of a puncher early in his career. Elvis Gomez, man, it's been there was a lot of, at the end of the ShowBox era, there was some push behind him, and it just hasn't quite materialized. He's starting to push 30. I think he's 28, 29 years old at this point, and he's kind of in a put up or shut up kind of moment. He's had the first loss again, like Lukey said, his last fight, he really did kind of struggle. And it hasn't quite panned out for him thus far. And Ingram is a greener guy, which I'm guessing, they like the fact that he's an unbeaten guy. But they want to get somebody that they feel like, if you can't win and look good against this guy who's never really fought at the world level, then where are we at? And I feel like Elvis is starting to come to that place. Felix Valera is a real character, man. I remember I was at one of his fights. I've never seen Pat Brown, the prospect. That's a big step up for him in his 5th pro fight, though. But I remember being at Valera's fight. Who did he fight that I was there? Let me see. I'm going down his box rec right now. I know that's exactly what you guys want to see. I'm pretty sure I was there for his fight with Sullivan Barrera, and he was a character then, but he was a guy, a Mayorga-esque, a Mayorga light, in terms of like his personality and his character, and also his chin kind of being right there. I did not expect that he would still be, as a cruiserweight, almost 10 years later, basically still pretty relevant and in fights. We just saw him in a pretty exciting fight with Tristan Kalkruth where, he really had his moments, and won some rounds, and I think kind of spoiled what was supposed to be like a highlight night for Kalkruth. So that'll be a nice win for Pat Brown in his 5th fight if he's able to do that. They must be confident in where he's at if they're matching well that early. Nishant Dev, he's another one I've only seen once. Been very impressed with him so far. This has got some good names, this little prospect card here. Jordan Thompson, I don't really remember. Oh no, yeah, I do remember this guy. He lost to Opataya. Anyways, we haven't seen Lukey here for a little bit, and I'm kind of running out of topics here, folks. If you got something you want me to talk about, feel free to leave it in the chat. Let's see. Felix Valera. I don't know if there's any other fights this week. You guys should definitely go watch the Fight Life with Mio Yoshida. I just put that shit out on ITR Boxing a couple of days ago. 25-ish minute documentary piece inside the gym with Mio, who has been the #1 contender in the IBF at bantamweight now since January, and unable to secure a fight. There he is. I'm just finishing the pitch real quick.
Which one was it?
Well, I kind of went through as many of the fights as I could, and then I just started pitching the Fight Life Mio Yoshida.
Oh, perfect. That's a great way to do it. But yeah, then 2 unsubstantiated rumors to end the show. There's internet rumors that Floyd Schofield will not be fighting Jojo Diaz on November 8th. Thoughts?
Will not
happen. There's internet rumors that he's out of the fight.
I don't really like that fight, honestly.
Okay, so it doesn't impact your life at all?
No, not particularly. And I thought it was a bit of a mismatch to begin with.
The other rumor is Adam Azim's original opponent, Zaire Abduliev. It's out. Once again, internet rumors, Twitter rumors. Kurt Scooby is a name being associated with possibly fighting Adam Azim. That sounded like a good matchup.
It's a decent matchup. I think Abduliev generally is more reliable at the world level. It feels like with Scooby, like he just kind of throws everything the same speed, but that would be a tremendous late minute
fight of the year type bout, in my opinion, because you got 2 flawed guys. And if they both land, like the great fights, typically 2 guys hit the deck, which means you have 2 flawed guys. Did you guys see I'm going to assume that means, did you guys see the Central Asia fights? I didn't, man, keep crazy. I think you're referencing the Luis Neri fights that occurred, and the John Real Casimiro had fights. And this is just deep. I don't even think Dakota gets this deep and dark in boxing, but this is off television. This is
that's unfortunate. That's 2 guys I would like to see. I don't understand why a guy like Luis Neri would be fighting off TV.
This is like where I'm starting to go, is like there's YouTube streams from like Asia of like shows that are because like I'll be honest with you, and then it'll just be my rant. It's like the main event boxing's like pretty boring to me. I like seeing like these funky developmental shows and see how guys are going, and young up and comers and guys getting bounce back fights. If we stopped doing this, or I stopped doing this, I'd watch that stuff, but I probably would never watch main event boxing unless I was interested. the main event fights just don't always do it to me. And I feel like there's a level of just watching boxing for so long that you go to that level. So you haven't become that degenerative yet. But there's a point where I think you start watching, like, what was it the other day? I was watching Colombian boxing. It was like 40 people, and someone had like a stream of it, like a taped full show. And I'm
watching Joel Julio lose his 36th fight in a row or whatever.
Well, I was watching like prospects, and it's like, this is what I'm doing. But like, I'll just like watch a few rounds of a pro fight and be like, okay, I get what's happening. I can do something else. I don't need to watch all 12. I've seen fights like this one. And if something happens, I can go back. But yeah, there you go. Rant over.
There you
go. Anything else?
I think we've just about covered a relatively medium week of boxing.
Yeah, and it's going to be pretty consistently that. We're going to get a couple of big weeks in the middle of the month. We're going to get, they wanted to make Casemiro versus Neri December 27th, but Neri got a head cut. Okay, well, that's a bummer. I think that November 8th, next week, we'll be talking about Virgil Ortiz, his return. That's an interesting one. Then we go into Jake Paul, Gervonta Davis. You're super excited. And Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr. So those are, I mean, fights that I wouldn't say I'm excited for, but they're big fights, you know? And then we have that super card, that big, the Haney, the Norman, all the big name fighters. And that's kind of our last big fight card of the year. We're going to have a couple of smaller ones after that.
We also got the Nakatani in a way.
And we got the Roach Cruise. So I guess we have a little string of fights, but really feels like we're trying to get to that November 22nd card, and then we're going to start to slow down for the year. So it's a weird time in boxing, because it's like, we talked about how it felt like we go months without cards we're interested in. And even when we're getting to these tentpole cards, it still feels slow. Feels like this is if we were going to put in retrospect this year, it's a year without momentum. It's just a year that really has not ever caught fire. We're getting some good fights, but I'd say that there's too many stop starts, and there's not enough consistent flow and synergy, where I truly believe, even though we're getting great fights and probably the best matchups I've seen in a long time, we're losing a lot of boxing fans because it's too easy to not watch boxing. And we're just seeing the most passionate boxing fans stay with the sport. But I think that we're losing a good, solid backing of fans that jumped in during the Floyd Oscar days, and we're sticking around and staying around. And maybe I'm hopeful about that long. Maybe it's the Floyd Conor, maybe it's the Floyd Pacquiao, but we're losing a lot of people that are just like, boxing's not like what it used to be, what I liked. And they're going to more accessible sports like baseball, basketball, football, or whatever they do, streaming networks, getting a girlfriend. And it feels like we're kind of hitting a weird point where there's just not a huge demand.
No, it's highly inaccessible. It's consistently behind multiple paywalls, and it's not localized anymore.
Yeah, it's a strange time, and I think we're all kind of waiting to see where it leads to, because it feels like this isn't the way it's going to be. And, we're looking to see what are the fights that get made in 2026. What does the landscape look like? So I think a couple of years like this, stop and start, and the sport's in a weird, I think we have more momentum, but it's like people used to compare boxing to concerts. And I'd say it's more like concerts now than it's ever been, where it's like, okay, this fight is happening, and then we're gonna have
mixed messaging. There's this concept of like, oh my god, we're getting all the best matchups now. If I thought of 10 fights that are the 10 fights I want to see, none of them are really made right now. So that's also kind of bullshit.
Yeah, I think we're getting some really interesting fights, like Brian Norman, Devin Haney is a great fight. Cruz Roach is an interesting fight. Like, we're getting good fights. Janabek, Arislandi Lara. Eubank Ben is a fight we probably wouldn't have gotten in the past, or, like we're getting good fights, but the thing that's killing me, and maybe I'm remembering wrong, or maybe COVID was different coming out of COVID, and I don't remember before that, but it felt like every week there was a fight week to get excited for. Okay, this is this fight week, and it feels like we're getting fewer media workouts, which for most people it might not matter, but it's like that is a beat of the week for people like me, where it's like, okay, what does the media workout look like? What is this fighter doing? Kind of like, breaks up the monotony of the week. And it feels like we're kind of just getting a Thursday press conference and a weigh-in, which on top of it just feels like there's fewer and fewer things. We're cutting back more and more. And I'm curious where we're going. It was marketed as villains. Okay, so it was like Luis Neri versus John Real Casimero, the bad boys. That was the marketing for it. I like that. Well, we will be back next week, guys. Probably later than expected because I will be out of town. It'll probably be a midweek show. Honestly, I think that's okay because I think that people are not, I think they'll be okay with this fight week coming a little later. And we're going to break down some Virgil Ortiz, who I think is one of the most exciting fighters in all of boxing.
As do I. And that is one of the matchups I'm looking forward to.
Okay. Well, until next week, we will see you then. Thank you for listening.